Hello, y'all.
Howdy.
Welcome back to the Gen Free Podcast. May I get a round of applause, please? Clap this time. Yay, he clapped. Look,
Come
Brian,
on.
you can learn from this. Clap every time. This is a student-led podcast focused on discovering God's freedom in our everyday lives. As always, it is me, your host, Ayana, and who do we have here?
My name is Sawyer Robertson. I'm the co-host of the Gen Free Podcast, and I'm also the editor of the Gen Free Podcast. So
Have you added that in the name tag yet? You know, you added
it's been in for 5 or 6 episodes now.
Oh, I'm a little behind.
Yeah.
Oops.
She doesn't watch the videos we put out.
It's not that I don't watch them. I listen to them. I listen to them audibly.
Yeah.
But
Thank
watch
you to our
them,
audio
no.
listeners.
Yeah, shout out to y'all, for real. And we have a very lovely guest here
Yes, we
with us
do.
today to discuss a very important topic.
Mm-hmm.
And his name is Mike Van't Hul. I think I pronounced that wrong.
Van't Hul.
Van't Hul. Okay, I butchered his name. Mike Van't Hul.
You're blowing my ears off.
Sorry, did I say it right?
You got it.
Yay! Finally. I don't know. I always want to put the T after the hole. Yeah, and that's so incorrect.
It's before.
It's before.
Van't,
Van't
space,
Hul.
Hul.
Okay, I don't know why I always
got
wanna
it
do
now.
that. Okay, Mike Van't Hul. Okay, I got it.
Nice.
If I can learn Ayana, you can learn Van't Hul.
Yeah, I can.
We're good.
Yeah, exactly. And you learned Ayana, and I appreciate it.
It's all good.
How are you feeling today?
So good.
You
Just
excited?
celebrated Easter, so
Mm-hmm.
what a great Monday, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good times.
Yeah. What's your Easter usually look like? How do y'all do Easter in the Van't Hul household?
Well, it was different this year because we were not with family of our own, so we went with spiritual family and had good friends invite us over, and but just was focusing on Jesus, and really for us it was nice to relax and not have all the busyness of the holiday, but just time to focus on Him,
Yeah.
and then go to worship, of course, and that was amazing. But yeah, just really slowed down to really think, what did Good Friday mean, and Saturday and leading up to Sunday. So this year I think was special in a way that, we didn't have the busyness of hosting relatives and things like
Yeah.
that. You could really get the full meaning of the holiday, but
Mm-hmm.
it was special.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
How about you guys? It was a good Easter?
Yeah, it was great. So in the morning I went to both services. Well, we had 3 of them. I went to 2 of them. At the first one, I was there regularly, and then at the second one, I was doing prophetic art, and was drawing. I was praying about it beforehand, and I felt like I got the word humility, and then got the picture of the ground in a puddle, and then in the reflection of the puddle was the cross. And I felt like sometimes we have to lower ourselves in order to find God in some of the lower things in life. And then I felt like this lady across the sanctuary, I felt like it was for her, and I just felt like she was going to go through a season of humility and lowering and finding God in the low places. So it was
Wow.
really cool to get to give that to her. And then the rest of the day just hung out with family and friends, and then slept for 4 hours. And then
Wow.
woke up and then stayed up till 1 and then went to sleep.
You went to bed at 1.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty good for you.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah,
Man.
we take those.
Yeah, we'll take that because usually this man is up so late.
Usually, but
Yeah.
I've been doing better.
For real.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how did the woman, when she received it, what,
Mhm.
what did she have to say? Did it hit
She
home with her?
she asked if she could give me a hug, and
come
then and then thanked me and told me I was good at art, and then hugged me again, and then went on her way.
That's awesome.
So good.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
that's awesome.
How about you?
So I went to the last service at our church, and then I went straight to Philadelphia afterwards. I have a lot of family in Philly. I'm from Philly, and I ate so well. It was so good. I had to post a picture because my abuelos can throw down. That plate was fantastic. I don't know. Food's a big deal.
You still full from that?
Yeah, honestly, not really. No, I'm hungry. That was last night. I made sure not to eat all day so I could eat that, and then it lasted me till 10 o'clock this morning. So it was so good, man. You know, it's a plus. I understand the reason for the season and everything God did, but man, that food on Easter, oh, it was fantastic. That sounds so gluttonous. I'm sorry, y'all.
Hey, you can talk about how good food is.
That food
What are you
was
talking
so
about?
good. It was so good. But yeah, you ready to jump into this?
Yeah.
Let me adjust myself. I'm like sitting on a pillow. Do you know what we're talking about today?
Yes, I do.
You want to announce it for our audience?
We're going to talk about missions, and one of the favorite subjects that we have to talk about because, man, it's the best life, I feel, is the life of missionary work. So ask away any questions you'd have about it. We have, my wife and I have 16 years experience on the mission field.
Wow.
We would have stayed there the rest of our lives, but unfortunately in 2021, the communist government made us to leave country. And so we've been back in the States now 3 years. And I think the next best thing to being on the mission field would be to encourage others to pray about going. So if we can do that tonight, then that's my goal, because it is the best life.
We could pray about that at the end then.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely. Because I've heard the reason we chose this topic is because a lot of people, it feels, at least in our generation, I feel like Will Hart has said this and other people have said this at our events.
Yeah.
A lot of people in Generation Z feel called into missions. Like there's a high calling of missionary living on our generation, which is insane to think about.
The statistic is 50% of our generation after an encounter with Jesus looks at missionary as a full-time job.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
And that's a huge amount of kids and young adults that are going into this. And we chose it because sometimes I think it's good, a lot of times, especially before you make a decision like this, it's good to have the perspective of people who've already been through it.
For sure.
And so that is why we invited you on, and I'm so excited to get into this. But the first thing that you said that kind of interests me, I heard communist government. So where did you go in which there was a communist government in place?
We were called to mainland China.
Wow.
And really, my heart's desire was anywhere in the 1040 window, which is an area on the globe where 95% of the unreached people groups are. And 99% of the persecuted church lives in this area on the earth. And I said, God, if I want to do missions work, as long as I'm in that area, that's great. And sure enough, that's where we ended up being called to. So I didn't really choose that, but I was wanting to go somewhere, where the gospel hadn't been preached as much. So
yeah.
So how did God lead you and your wife, because your whole family was out there as well? How did God press your hearts to go to China, of all places?
Well, I'll back up and say it started with Jesus. And it's always about Jesus. And really, it's not just a saying, but as we fell in love with him, we realized, an expression of love for Jesus is love and compassion for people. And so we just started serving people right where we were at in Florida in our communities. And then, the next step was, well, we heard there was an opportunity to serve in a second or third world country. And so we just started taking those steps to do short-term trips because we realized, there's a lot of people that don't have the benefits that we have in the United States.
Yeah.
And let's get out of our element and go serve in a different country. And man, it was through those short-term trips and just one step after another that led us, by the third trip, we realized as good as this was, and each one was life-changing, it just wasn't enough for us. We just realized, wow, we want to do this the rest of our lives.
Wow.
And so then the big question is where and how and when and all those details. We had to press in to hear God's voice, which that's something that, in talking about missions, it's all about his voice. You don't have to have all the best plans. You just have to have a real relationship with him to where you discern what is he speaking to you. And then you can just take those steps and realize that he's got a plan and he'll lead you. And so was our whole life, was just surrendered to him and really let him guide where we're going. And so even within, that area in the globe, it was a lot. And also at that time for us, the Lord was prompting us to adopt. And that's a whole long story. But as we got the call to adopt, my wife saw a program on TV about the needs of the children in China. And it was just that simple. She said, I think we should adopt from China. And we prayed, and long story short, realized, yeah, that's what the Lord's calling us to do. And so through the adoption of our daughter, we realized, well, maybe that is the nation he's calling us to serve. And we prayed a lot into that and really followed the Lord's leading and pressed in and realized, yes, indeed, that's, the adoption of our daughter was so amazing. It's just the best. She was meant to be in our family. And so with that came just a knowing we can't adopt hundreds, but we could go to her nation where there was a need and really impact a lot. And so that was the short version of the progression of us getting to China. So God uses any different ways, and for us it was the adoption, which was a driving force for us in that nation, was to serve the poor and the orphans. And so it really made sense in where he was calling us, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to go back a few steps, because there was something that was kind of highlighted to me in my head on what you said. You said you served in your communities first and where you lived, and then your next step was like small mission trips around. Is that something you'd recommend for people who are just getting into this, instead of just choosing a nation and going out there?
Yes, for sure. You need to start serving locally. I mean, I think, why just go somewhere else when you haven't practiced in your own setting where God has placed you, and serve anywhere around. He'll highlight, people and places for you to go serve, and just give your love away and start practicing what that means to love like Jesus. But then I encourage everybody to get a passport, whether you're called to full-time missions or not. Just, it's a good step to saying, Lord, I'm ready and willing to go anywhere you would send me. And so that's a good first step. Have that passport ready and just be open and be praying. And then, there's so many places and different types of missions you could do. And so just in prayer and see what the Lord would highlight to you as far as where to go. Because I'm a firm believer in those short-term trips. Actually, it was one of our requirements. If you wanted to come on our team to serve long-term, we would require you to do a short-term trip first, because we knew firsthand that it was just a good experience. You go to that nation first, and you pray about, well, what does this culture really look like? Could I see myself here? And just really dialoguing with the Lord before, during, and after that short-term trip. Process it with him and say, is this the place, God? And really have that peace and that knowing after that short-term trip. So much comes that way. We saw the wisdom in that requirement, and for us it was the same way. And so, but it was also so good that we went back again and did another short-term trip. And each time, the Lord would do something different. You can't outgive him. You think, oh, I'm giving my time and my money and serving my heart out, and what he gives you in return, just the experience of that, and just the wisdom and just the relationship with him, and all of that is a lot. So it's well worth it to do a short-term trip. And I know we're talking about doing a youth power invasion trip to Brazil. Some of you guys are going on that, and man, what a great experience at a young age that you guys could have that. For us, we were in our 30s by the time, we started doing these trips, and had already lived, a lot by then, but the sooner the better. Just great experiences to realize how a lot of the world lives, in second and third world countries, and it makes you forever thankful, to be in the U.S. And I think just getting out of your element, God has such an opportunity to speak to you and encounter you in different ways when you're outside of your normal routine. And so just so many benefits. I strongly encourage a short-term trip, because most people like us will require it eventually anyway. So much can happen, if you give God just a week or two and go serve your heart out.
So what's the ministry you work for that requires the This is just a random
Our
question.
ministry was called Loaves and Fishes International.
And you guys required.
And we did. We
Okay.
required that, but we learned that from other missionary groups that had also had that guideline. And so it's interesting, you would come to us to give your life away in China and serve with us, but we would have quite a bit of requirements. We really wanted people to know that they know they were called.
Yeah.
Because it was not an easy place to serve. And so in that, we wanted them to be sure, and we wanted to be as sure as we could, that we were both hearing God's voice, and then bring them onto the team. And we had so many that served many years that way, because they did the due diligence, and so did we. And so then, you just come into family and you do life in that situation. And it was so amazing that, so many of them stayed much longer than the 2-year requirement. So it was great.
Oh, they were required to stay 2 years.
Yes, we did.
Awesome.
We required at least a minimum of 2 years stay. So
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Any questions so far?
I'm good.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Right. Then we're going to get right into this one. So my question is about culture shock, because I can only imagine the culture of China is vastly different from the culture we have here in the eastern part of the United States. So how was that like for you going over there and your family? Because from the story you've told us, you brought your 3 children along
that's right.
with you. So if we could get into that.
Yeah, that's a great question. And, when you feel like we were so called, God transplanted our heart into the nation. We just couldn't wait to get there. We knew that we were called. We made sure of that. And so we just assumed, well, we're here. This is our life. We thought it would be a lifelong call. It was a one-way ticket. We were all in.
Yeah.
And we thought, there's no cultural things that, are going to shake us up. We're just
almost
really,
naively.
Yeah, we're here. But, somebody said it in our first year, and they said, you're going through some cultural change, and, you should just take that into consideration. And we kind of almost took offense and plowed ahead. But then looking back, about year 3 or 4, we were thinking, that first year we were going through way more than we realized. Yes, you need to be confident in your call. But, it was such a drastic cultural difference that there was more than we realized. Although it was pretty obvious at times, because like you said, we came with 3 young children, and one of which, our middle son, had blonde hair, even though my wife and I have brown hair. When he was younger, he had blonde hair. So, they would see us, well, you have one boy that's got brown hair, one with blonde, and a Chinese daughter. Then you have the special needs boy. What is all this you're doing? And we'd get a lot of stares. We felt like we're in a fishbowl a lot in public. And it was just a chance to just grow in grace and accept the culture and learn that, for them, it wasn't that they were staring to be rude. They were just interested and curious and would lock eyes on us. And we just realized, hey, if we give a friendly smile, it kind of will help in that. Otherwise, for us, we think, oh, how rude, you're just staring at our family. And it's kind of,
But over there, staring is not that.
It's not to them. It wasn't considered rude. And so, just a lot of cultural differences that took time just living in the land. That, again, that's why 2 years is important, because in the first year, you're learning a lot of that, just little things like, you go to give a business card, they present with 2 hands like this. So just say, hey, here's my card. Just all those little things that you only get by living there and immersing yourself in the culture and realizing that, you can do chopsticks and do just fine. And so, there is a lot of cultural change, but God has grace. And just know that it's going to happen, even if you're like us and you're all sold out, you're called. It's going to be a natural time, especially the first year. Lots of that change. And so by the second year, then, you've overcome a lot of that adjustment, and you're really tuned in to the mission God has you on. You're getting some of the language, you're getting more comfortable, and you can really make more of an impact in the mission, and so then it's more fulfilling. And so there's a whole big difference between year 1 and year 2, and so that's why we like people to stay 2 years, because then as you're praying, God, is this where you have me called? You have that adjustment piece, and you're more solidified in that, and then you can pray from a place of peace and rest to say, I love it here, but is this the place? And God can speak to you that way. So,
yeah. Did you ever feel frustrated not being able to understand certain customs or certain things that were done over there? And how would you, because I can only imagine for people who this is a whole new ball game, jumping into it, there might be a sense of frustration. How did you manage frustration, and how would you recommend others manage frustration when you're in a whole new area?
I'll give you a good example. Something that was frustrating as we were learning the language. My vocabulary was limited, but the few words I did know, I got the tone down right, I thought. But what would happen a lot of times is you go into a public place where they've never met you, and they see a white face, and they just assume you're going to be speaking foreign to me, and I'm not going to understand you. And so they're just, that's already the mindset that they have going in before you speak. And so even though I would start speaking in Chinese and very slow, very simple, they would act like they don't understand anything I'm saying when I'm checking my tones and my words, and I'm like, okay, I've got this down. This is correct, but they're just like not tracking with me because of that preconceived thought, oh, you're a foreigner, you're going to speak something foreign to me. And I wasn't. I was trying to use their language, and I was getting frustrated because they wouldn't understand me. And I'm like, this one, I know I'm saying it right. Why aren't you hearing me? But in that frustration, I just had to realize, hey, I'm in their country, and I need to learn more of their culture, more of their language, and be patient as, they're trying to listen to my few words. If I had a larger vocabulary, it would have been better. So I just had to, have grace to grow in that. So.
Did you study the language at all before?
We did.
You did? Okay.
We did once we got there. We didn't study beforehand. And there's all different ways you can do missions, and that's definitely not the way I'm saying this is the way to do missions. Just go and learn as you're there. It's one way. We felt to leave when the Lord called us to go. Timing is real important. You can know that you're called to missions, but when? So to get that timing right was critical. So for us, we felt like, well, the door is open. He's calling us to go now. And so we went, just trusting that as we applied ourselves and studied the language, we would do well. And I'll share an interesting piece about that, because Mandarin's not an easy language to learn, and we sure wanted to get much more than we were, ended up being able to speak. But one thing it did do was it made us dependent on each other. So our disciples that we brought in to work with us, were much younger and needed to be discipled in ministry and in life. And so we needed to depend on them for language to fill in the gaps as we met with government and different people. But they in turn got so much experience from us and learned a lot from us and our leadership and the way we talked to people and the decisions we made. And so that codependency on each other and working as a team was really helpful. So
it's amazing.
That helps us feel a little bit better than, but I was still, boy, we wanted more of the language. We tried our little hearts out, but it was tough. But again, it kept us humble and dependent, and we could say, enough to get around and make people feel like we care enough to learn their language. And so
Are you still able to hold conversation in Chinese or Mandarin?
Hold conversation would be tough, but we still speak enough to say some words not lose it all.
That's awesome. I guess at least in this area, there's not a high need to speak Mandarin. No, not in this area. There's a high need for Spanish, I could tell you that.
That's right. It's one of those things, if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
And
took 2 years of Spanish. It did nothing for me. I did not like that class.
I don't like Spanish class either, but I'm surrounded by Spanish all the time.
Yeah.
So I have to adjust,
Mm-hmm.
especially if my mom's yelling at me, I got to be able to interpret that, don't I?
That's right. So if it's with you and it's around you all the time, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
different. You
You
pick
learn
up
it.
on things, you
Mhm.
learn.
Yeah.
For sure.
But yeah, would you recommend people to learn language before? I know we're speaking so much on language,
I
but
probably would, in the perfect scenario. I think the more you can do ahead of time to prepare yourself is wisdom.
mm,
And just, all along the way, just be sensitive to Holy Spirit and let Him guide it. But I don't think there's anything wrong with being well prepared with language, culture, and
Mm-hmm.
all those studies that can come with it, and give you as much of a head start as possible.
Mhm.
We really were put in the deep end real quick and
Yeah.
had to adjust to a lot. But again, going back to the timing, knowing that they did kick us out and all the other foreigners, and so that window was limited. If that time would have been shortened by years of studying, that would have been that many lives that wouldn't have been saved, because we were literally, saving dying children.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of different ways you can look at that, but ultimately, I'd say study the language first if you can.
Yeah.
Unlike your situation where it boiled down to timing, in which
Yes, I really felt, we knew God was saying, this is the time, go now. Trust Him for everything, financial support, language, literally depend on Him for everything was what we're called to do. So it was a wild ride, very exciting,
Mm-hmm.
but not
Sounds
for the
amazing.
timid or faint at heart. And so there's many different ways, some can go through a missions training and sending organization, and you'll be more prepared, but you'll also be more, I won't say controlled, but you'll have more guidelines in how you do life and do ministry on the mission field. But you'll also get probably more support from that sending organization. So there's good and bad with everything. The way we went, we started a small nonprofit and just went out led by the Spirit and just learned as we went, and just trusted Him for everything. So there's way more flexibility in that way of doing missions, but it's also more challenging because you don't have the large organization to look to if something goes bad. So you got to really trust Him and lean into God for everything. So no one right way to do missions, but we knew as we prayed the way God told us to do it and try to stay true to that. And I think if people do it that way, how God speaks to you, then you'll succeed because He knows you and what He's calling you to. And so just stay true to that.
Yeah. I think for me, because I felt called to missions and going out, and I've been on trips, and I think the timing and knowing which and when and where God wants to call me is the hard part, and I have struggled with it, especially since I love my parents, but they're not really used to like the model of missions and using it as your like full-time job, and and I guess what I'm trying to say is that sometimes like dealing with that has made it hard to like try to fully trust in Him, because I want to be fully dependent on Him and where He wants to take me and call me to. But having that thought in the back of my head of like, how am I going to support myself and how am I going to do this is something that has been really hard for me. So I guess I just want to ask, how did you deal with that in that time?
Yeah,
Perfect
good question, because nobody else is going to receive your call but you. And so even sometimes Christian friends and family won't always be as supportive as you would like them to be. Because you're like, what do you mean? I'm living what it says in the Bible to do. And, I'm so in love with Jesus. I just want to do this to please him. But, ultimately, you just really need to extend grace to them, realizing, your call is unique. It's only to you.
Mm-hmm.
They have no clue because they haven't heard that from the Lord for their lives. And so it's hard for them to relate. But, I think a lot of it just goes back to that relationship with the Lord and trusting him and following through and just trusting that he'll take care of your family as well.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, it did take some time. And so you have to have that tenacity to stick with it. But then in time, they'll see the fruit in your life,
Mm-hmm.
personally and spiritually, and hopefully they'll see the fruit in your ministry.
Yeah.
And then they'll be more supportive as time goes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's why in the beginning, just your prayer life and your walk with the Lord and just that knowing from him
Mm-hmm.
is everything. Because, you may not get a whole lot of support and encouragement. And that's okay. It needs to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he calls you, he'll be with you.
Yeah.
And you just have to trust him with all the details and like I said, extend grace and understanding and patience for those
Mm-hmm.
that in the beginning, aren't necessarily with you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
but the fruit will speak for itself, eventually. And even in the beginning, if you feel confident in the Lord and what he's doing in you, that'll go a long way. But if they sense, you have any doubt or reservation, they will probably highlight that and speak into the negative part of your calling.
Mm-hmm.
But as much as you can reassure them, look, I know that I know. I've taken time to hear from the Lord on this. I've taken time to ask counsel and say, hey, I've met with other people that are leaders and mentors, and I said, this is what I feel like I'm hearing from the Lord. What do you think? And you've let them speak into your lives. And so again, the more you can confidently say, this is my calling.
Yeah.
And I, ask that you'd pray for me and offer support,
Yeah.
they'll do it.
So I want to build off Sawyer's question. Some people say it's good to have confirmation from people around you. Did you guys receive any confirmation, and do you agree with that statement?
I do. Again, I think it's wisdom because it's all about his voice, but I think it's biblical and it's the right posture to say, I want to weigh this with, leaders that I trust,
Mm-hmm.
their walk with the Lord, and they know me and my life, and it's not going to take the place of his voice. It's not going to be number one, but I do believe it shows honor to the Lord and humility to process through with somebody that's trusted to say, these are the things that I feel like I'm hearing the Lord doing. This is what I'm seeing him prepare me to do. Does this resonate with you? Do you see any red flags in what I'm sharing? Please be open to speak into my life. And I think we do gain a lot of wisdom and insight and hopefully confirmation to where they can speak in and say, yes, I was seeing that call on your life completely. Maybe they have an extra word or two of encouragement to speak into that because it does fit well with them. Many times there's other bits of wisdom that they can interject, but I think it's real important to seek counsel, but make sure you hear first from the Lord and get that down to where you feel confident in what he's saying, and you're not going to be easily swayed from it, but then still, present that to somebody you trust that's a leader.
Yeah, I feel like don't just go because people around you say they feel like you're supposed to go. Feel it. Get it from God first before just doing it just because everyone else is saying they think you should do this.
Yeah.
That's
100%.
right. I mean, in that case, you're almost getting ahead of God. People may see it on you, and whether it's true for now or not, they're pushing you to go, and you're like, well, I guess it makes sense. I should do it. They're a leader. They're somebody else that I trust. But never want to get ahead of God. You never want to get behind. Just you want to stay in step with what he's doing.
Yeah.
And not be pressured by people. This, again, the call to missions, yes, you love the people and you love the nation. You should have a heart for them. But ultimately, it's a heart for the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We went to China for Jesus. He was there. He was calling us to the nation. And yes, we fell in love with the people, and we loved the culture and every part of it.
Yeah.
But it was him. We were there for him, and always, kept that in check, that he was number one. Mm-hmm. And he's allowed to do anything in our lives, and he's our reward.
Yeah.
Not doing these great works as a reward to say, look what, we did as a missionary in this country or that. We just wanted to be a good son and a good daughter, and learn to love the Lord well.
So pure. Mm-hmm. And then from there, God opened so many opportunities and avenues for you in China. I know.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Because that's a great example, too. If you trust him and keep him the focus, he'll do those things. Mm-hmm. Like, we were probably pretty poor at building relationships. We didn't want to, we'd say, schmooze anyone. Did not want to do anything like that to taint the relationships. So we kept it very simple. We probably didn't do enough to build relationships, but we saw how God gave us favor. Yeah. And he opened the doors, and he did it way better than we could have ever done. And so that's a good point, to just let the Lord do that as he sees fit. Yeah. And he does it. And he does it most times better than we could.
Oh, 100%.
For sure.
Now, I do have a question about opposition. What opposition did you face while you were there, and how would you recommend going about facing opposition? Because I think there's different types of opposition, I feel, and I feel like there's a way you can do it with God and without God. And that's right. It's important to not lean on your own understanding in those circumstances. So I kind of want your opinion on that, and what God has led you when these circumstances have came up.
Yeah, for sure. We had really opposition from the beginning, and for pretty much everything we were called to do.
The whole time.
So, and especially the first 3 years, because nobody knew us. We were, pioneering something and just kind of plowing ground and asking for things really that weren't realistic anyways. We were there on a tourist visa, asking for children to be in our home. And so it was kind of, natural that there would be opposition. But then you got to understand, then there was a spirit behind what was going on. The enemy had, we'd say, marked these children for abuse and death, and had really just put an assignment on them. There was also a spirit operating, in that nation and in that region that didn't want anything of the kingdom. Yeah. And so there's these spiritual dynamics as well as, cultural and just practical laws, and to where, we were asking for children, and they would call us names, and they would say, absolutely not. What are you, crazy? You cannot have, this child or that child. But many times we would just pray and say, God, is this your will? And we would wait until we got the word of the Lord. Yeah. Until we knew he said, yes, these are the children you're supposed to have.
Was this through the foster care?
Yes, and system? Asking to foster them into our home, which it was a big ask.
Yeah.
But when we got the word of the Lord, when we knew he said yes, then we could take it to the bank. That doesn't mean that all of a sudden the doors just open immediately. Yeah. Many times we had to still press in and get on our face before God, be willing to fast extended lengths of time if that's whatever it took. But once we heard his voice, then we had to pray it through and keep praying and keep pressing. Like the Bible says, knock and keep knocking until we'd get the phone call. Oh, by the way, you can have the child. And we would have that happen over and over again where, the immediate response was no. You have enough, or you can't have this one, or, this or that. It was always opposition for pretty much everything we wanted to do. And so we just had to learn how to work with Holy Spirit and what he was doing. And yeah, I would say just have the tenacity on the mission field, because God says there's going to be a time of pressing in. Sometimes you have to wait. Sometimes there'll be other attacks or just difficulties.
Yeah.
But that tenaciousness that would come by the Spirit of God would allow us to hang in there long enough to see the breakthrough come. And so I think that's important. I like to share, Dr. Andy Clark has an example that he shared at a university once where he said every great person that made an impact for the kingdom had three things happen in their life. Number one, they had a life-altering encounter with God. Number two, they had a revelation of what that encounter was unto. Why did God meet with you so powerfully? And number three, you had tenacity to see that call through. And I think those three things for missions is so important, because it is all about the Lord. And man, once you get a glimpse of who he really is and how much he loves you, and you just want to love him back, however that looks. And so just getting a realization, well, why did, you give me so much power and love all at once, and, I just want to give it away. Is that for my neighborhood or is that for the nations? And then just realizing, yes, what he's been doing in you is for the mission field. Yeah. But then to just pray for the grace and the tenacity to see it through, because the opposition came, for us even before we made our first flight over, and within hours of when we're supposed to leave, my wife was in the emergency room with something just bizarre, unexpected, situation where they said, well, you'll have to stay in for a couple days or something, and we already had tickets bought, and we're like, no, we're going. And sure enough, that attack of the enemy lifted, and she was able to fly, and off we went. So, I don't think that's uncommon for him to resist, even before the flights, and, with family and friends coming against that call, and pretty much every step of the way, the enemy's not going to just stop.
Yeah.
Because you heard from the Lord.
Yeah.
And so you've got to have that within you to say, God, if you did this, I'm going to lean into you and trust you for every step, and I'm not going to give up unless you tell me to stop. And just knowing that the enemy's going to do what he can, but God's God, and he's got you. He'll see it through.
Yeah, and the enemy doesn't even have power anyway. That's right. He can only distort.
He likes to be intimidating and make you think he has all the power, but
I love I saw a thing about like when the enemy was tempting like Jesus in the desert, and he was like, if you like turn these rocks into bread, I will give you the whole world. And the meme was like, bro, I created this. Why do I want this?
It's true.
I made this.
I always find that story humorous. It's like, I'm going to give you all this. It's like, I made it, bro. Like, straight up. And it's always funny to look back on. I'm like, all the enemy can do is lie and distort.
That's right. Yeah. He is a liar.
Yeah.
And he'll use those lies any way he can to influence you. So just don't give him that power.
Yeah. We are 46 minutes into this, John, already.
Okay.
That is insane.
Yeah.
How fast time goes when we're having good conversations. I do not want to close this out at all. There's so many good things going on. Yeah. But if I had to choose one thing, my last main question, very open-ended. What is the main advice you'd give for people, specifically young people, contemplating about going into missions, just in general?
I'd say anybody that's had the thought, man, lean into that, because God's not doing that for everyone. So pay attention to that. Even if it's a slight whisper, it's like, oh, maybe. Pray about it. Maybe it's, for something down the road, but maybe it's earlier than you realize. But again, do some practical steps. Again, serve the poor, serve those in need where you're at, and get used to that. And then do the practical things like have a passport and be willing to go anytime short term. But really, just tune into the Lord. What is he doing in your life, and what does that look like? And just be ready and take small steps. Don't despise small beginnings.
Yeah.
Don't think, I'm going to go to this nation and change the world, by my great acts. But just be willing to humble yourself and start simple, start small, and let him, show you the next step, and trust him in the process.
Yeah.
It is the best. But so if you're thinking about it, chances are that's God.
Yeah.
Because I know I had no thoughts of that
Yeah.
until my relationship with the Lord really grew. And until, it became the desire of my heart. But before then, I would have been like, man, no way. No way at all was that possible. So if you're thinking about it, if you have some desire there, lean into it. Don't miss God. Because that could be what you're called to, but you end up just, out of the practicality of life, figure, well, I need to get a career, so I'll go to school, and just the normal progression that people would want to put you in. And it could distract from your destiny. You could be called just like I was, and you could miss it. And, thankfully, I heard when he was calling, and I leaned in and got to experience that, because it's the best. It is the best. I always think of that line, from Gladiator, where he says, what you do in this lifetime will echo for all of eternity. And those things that you can do on the mission field, as you give your life away and trust God to use you and make an impact, those things are eternal. And so if you want to do something with your life where it has real meaning and purpose, I think there's nothing like the mission field. So go for it, I say.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Thanks for having me. You guys are awesome.
Yeah. I already love you already. This has been so awesome that you have been here and talked to us about this. And it's encouraged me, and it has me thinking on a lot now. But, can you close us out in prayer?
I would love to.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for letting me share this
Of
little bit
course.
on missions. I mean, it's so much we could share a long time, and you guys know how to reach me. So if anybody has any questions, they can contact me directly, and I'd love to talk to them more about it, because it does help. That's how we learned. We listened to the ones that had gone before us. So, which I'll start there in prayer. Father, thank you for the countless people that did lay their lives down so that people like my wife and I, Dina and I, could go into a nation like China. And we just honor those martyrs, those that sowed their lives. And there's countless others. God, you know each of them by name, and I thank you for them. I thank you for just the blessing that you chose us and you call us. You have a destiny for all of us, and we can trust you with our whole life. And so, Lord, I pray for those that would listen to this or watch this, that if a call to missions is for them, that you would just let it burn within them, Holy Spirit, and let it grow stronger and stronger. And give them grace and wisdom to start taking steps and lean into that destiny. I break off any fear or any lies about what it could be. And God, I just pray, let your will be made known and let it be clear for those that would have a heart to serve you on the mission field. And I pray that they'll be able to learn from others, but mostly that they would just learn from you, Holy Spirit. You know them, and you know the beginning to the end. And so I pray, Holy Spirit, encounter them and just take them on this journey in life. And Lord, we just thank you. We thank you for your presence that does go with us. You're everything. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Audience, if you haven't already, follow us at Faith Like Birds on our Instagram, on our YouTube channel, on our Spotify, on our Apple Podcast. What am I missing?
MySpace.
And our MySpace, which doesn't exist. But good night, y'all.
Make sure to subscribe, hit that bell icon.
Oh, yeah.
And a like button.
Comment, too. You want to talk to
too.
us? You want to say something crazy?
Yeah.
Do it. Do it. I encourage you. All right.
All right. Be blessed.
Bye.
Blessings.